In my village, the houses are quite far apart from each other. Today I had to go to my teacher's house, which is about 1 kilometer away from mine, to borrow some notes. Normally I would have cycled there, but my brother had taken the bicycle. This meant I had to walk, passing through the forest to get to my teacher's house. On the way back, I found myself walking through the dark forest, with the moon barely visible through the thick trees. As I stumbled through the underbrush, I came across a tree that seemed to be calling out to me. Without thinking, I reached out to touch it, and suddenly, I was overwhelmed with a sense of dread. The tree appeared to be alive, its branches reaching out to grab me and its roots pulling me closer. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. As I struggled to break free from the tree's grasp, I noticed a faint glow coming from its trunk. I leaned in closer, my curiosity overpowering my fear. And that's when I saw it. A face twisted in agony, trapped within the bark. Startled, I staggered backwards, fear gripping my mind. It was evident that this tree was possessed, and I was its unfortunate prey. Attempting to flee, my legs refused to budge, leaving me trapped in its sinister presence. As the branches began to slither towards me like snakes, a sense of dread enveloped me. The branches coiled around me, constricting my chest and stealing my breath away. The tree's malevolent gaze bore into me, sending shivers down my spine. Just as I felt like I was on the brink of collapse, the tree abruptly released its hold on me. Collapsing to the ground, I struggled to regain my composure, gasping for air. It was then that I noticed the other trees in the forest, all alive and moving in a macabre display. Realization dawned upon me that I needed to flee this haunted forest, lest I meet the same fate as others before me. Summoning all my strength, I sprinted through the forest, evading the reaching branches and leaping over twisted roots. Yet the trees persisted in their pursuit, a relentless force in the darkness. Their presence lingered behind me, their hushed murmurs reverberating in my thoughts. The certainty of my impending doom in this accursed place weighed heavily on me. Just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, I chanced upon a clearing. At its heart stood a solitary tree, its boughs stretching towards the heavens. It beckoned to me, as if it held the key to my survival. As I drew closer, I discerned a peculiar quality about it. Unlike its counterparts, this tree exuded an air of tranquility, almost as if it were extending a warm invitation. And then I noticed it, a carving on its trunk, my name etched into the bark. In that moment, everything fell into place. This was not a malevolent tree. It was a tree that had been awaiting my arrival. It had been calling out to me, endeavoring to lead me to safety. With a profound sense of relief, I sank down against the tree's sturdy base, finding solace in its protective embrace. I never ventured back into that forest, but the memory of the enigmatic tree and the invaluable lesson it imparted remained etched in my mind. Appearances can be deceiving, and true nature often lies beneath the surface. At the outskirts of the village, a weathered oak tree loomed, its twisted branches reaching out like the fingers of a witch. It had been there for ages, its bark worn and rough, etched with deep lines that resembled contorted faces frozen in silent terror. The locals shunned it, spinning tales of a cursed tree that fed on the life force of anyone who dared to approach. Despite hearing the ominous legends, a young woman remained unfazed. She prided herself on being pragmatic and dismissive of superstitions. However, an inexplicable force drew her to the ancient oak on a misty evening. The air was heavy with an uncharacteristic cold, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, eerie shadows danced and swayed around the base of the tree. As she drew closer, the air seemed to thicken, the quiet becoming almost suffocating. The usual forest sounds, leaves rustling, crickets chirping, and birds calling, were noticeably absent, as if the tree had devoured all life around it, leaving behind a stifling emptiness. Tentatively, she reached out to touch the bark, but hesitated just inches away. The space around the trunk felt charged, pulsing with a sinister energy that sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, a gust of wind whipped through the branches, despite the previous stillness. The leaves rustled, almost as if they were whispering urgent, incomprehensible voices. Pulling her hand back, she scanned her surroundings, her breath quickening. Though no one was in sight, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The elderly caretaker had once shared a chilling tale with her, his voice rough and filled with dread as the spoke of the peculiar tree. "It's different from the rest," he had cautioned, his gaze haunted by a deep-rooted fear. Dismissing his words initially, she now found herself haunted by his warning, the ominous message replaying in her thoughts like a sinister melody. As night descended, the tree appeared to loom larger, its ominous silhouette casting a foreboding shadow that seemed to reach out towards her. The twisted faces etched into the bark appeared to come alive, their expressions morphing from anguish to a malevolent grin that sent shivers down her spine. With a sudden start, she stumbled backwards, her pulse quickening as she tripped over an exposed root and tumbled to the ground. The murmurs emanating from the tree grew louder, a dissonant chorus of voices that seemed to beseech, caution, and menace all at once. Scrambling to her feet, her eyes wide with terror, she watched in horror as the tree's branches contorted and reached out towards her, as if with a sinister intent to ensnare her. The very ground beneath her felt unsteady, as though the tree's roots were alive and writhing just beneath the surface, seeking to ensnare her in their grasp. Fleeing in a state of panic, she abruptly changed direction and sprinted away, refusing to glance over her shoulder. The ominous presence of the tree loomed behind her, emanating a sinister energy that seemed to reach out for her very essence. The eerie whispers trailed after her, gradually fading as she finally made it to the safety of the village. The following morning, the villagers discovered her trembling form, crouched on the steps of the ancient church, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. She remained silent about her harrowing experience, but the haunted look in her eyes spoke volumes to those around her. The ancient oak tree stood stoically, concealing its dark mysteries within its gnarled bark, patiently awaiting the next unsuspecting wanderer to draw near. Meanwhile, the village gossiped in hushed tones, cautioning all who would listen about the cursed tree that fed on the very essence of those who dared to approach it. On a rainy day, I took up residence in the ancient farmhouse. It was nestled in a remote location, far from the hustle and bustle of the town and surrounded by dense woods. I was informed that the previous owner had left in a hurry, but I didn't mind the seclusion. I was in need of a fresh start, and this place felt like the perfect fit. The initial days were uneventful, spent on unpacking and settling into my new home. The house was old and creaky, with floors that groaned underfoot and walls that whispered in the wind. It had a certain charm, and I found solace in its antiquity. However, everything changed one evening when I stumbled upon the tree. It stood at the edge of the property just beyond the back fence. A massive willow with long drooping branches that swayed even when there was no breeze. Its trunk was thick and twisted, covered in dark knotted bark that seemed to pulsate in the dim light. The first time I laid eyes on it, a chill ran down my spine, but I dismissed it as a mere illusion caused by the fading light. Intrigued by my own curiosity, I found myself drawn back to the mysterious tree the following day. As I neared it, a peculiar marking caught my eye on the trunk, a rugged scar that bore an uncanny resemblance to a human face, complete with empty eyes and an open mouth. Despite the eerie appearance, I couldn't resist the urge to reach out and feel the cold, damp bark beneath my fingertips. The sensation was unsettling, akin to touching something lifeless and devoid of warmth. That night, as the wind howled and the house groaned, an unsettling sound pierced the air, a mournful wail emanating from the direction of the willow tree. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the wind, but deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play. In the days that followed, the wailing intensified, almost as if it was beckoning me closer. Shadows danced outside my window and sleep became a distant memory as the tree's eerie call grew stronger. Despite my apprehension, I found myself inexplicably drawn to the haunting presence of the willow tree. It was a dark and restless night, and I reached my breaking point. With a flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, I ventured outside, ready to confront the source of my torment. The sound of wailing intensified as I neared the tree, and there, etched into the bark, was the haunting face once again, more vivid than ever. Its eyes seemed to track my every move, and its mouth twisted in a silent scream. Standing before the tree, I brandished the knife and demanded answers. Suddenly, the wailing ceased, and a deep, resonant voice reverberated in my mind, pleading for release from torment. I didn't fully comprehend, but I knew I had to take action. With trembling hands, I began to hack at the tree, ignoring the pain and blood as I relentlessly carved into the bark. The tree quivered, and the face contorted in agony, but I persisted, determined to free whatever was trapped within. Out of nowhere, the tree violently split apart, emitting a thunderous sound that sent me tumbling to the ground from the force of the icy wind that followed. Mysterious, shadowy figures emerged from the tree, swirling around me before vanishing into the darkness of the night. The eerie wailing ceased, leaving behind an unsettling silence that enveloped me as I struggled to catch my breath, with the first light of dawn slowly appearing on the horizon. The once towering willow tree had vanished, leaving behind only a charred, lifeless stump in its wake. The atmosphere around the farmhouse shifted, the heavy feeling that had lingered dissipating into nothingness. Although I never discovered the true nature of those spirits or why they were confined within the tree, I made a solemn vow to steer clear of that cursed spot in the future. Despite the newfound sense of lightness that surrounded the farmhouse, there was an underlying unease that lingered within me, hinting at the possibility of more dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. The air was calm, but the memory of that chilling encounter with the spirits would forever haunt me, serving as a stark reminder of the mysteries that lay hidden within the shadows of the old willow tree. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying stories. And remember, sometimes the most horrifying monsters aren't the ones that chase you, but the ones that wait patiently for you to come to them.